So, after working on this video for 2 months, because yes, I started working on this on the 1st of May, 2021, here is, finally, a new video. I'm not gonna try to make any excuses, but that's exactly what I'm gonna do. But in between then and now, my computer not only decided to crash on me, but I also decided that it was a good idea to do some major story restructuring at the very last minute. Anyhow, let me just explain how this whole ordeal started. In the ye olden times of May 1st, 2021, Cecilia, that is me, decided that she wanted to see how much she's improved ever since she started writing the story. Well, Lemon Soda and Coffee, my comic. Check it out on Webtoon and Tapas. Links in the description below. Haha. But little did she know that she was going to embark on a journey that was going to take far longer than she expected it to. It all started out nice and dandy. Checking out the old panels, revisiting the old thumbnails, and realizing that they're not that bad. So, after carefully analyzing the old versions, determining what could stay the same and what needed to be changed, she got to work on the new version. Only to not have time to continue for another week after realizing that she took far longer than needed for this first tiny step. It would take another week at least to get back on track and continue the darn thumbnails that should have taken at best an hour or two of drawing on a good day. I mean, come on, it's like way shorter than any of the recent episodes. How the heck did it take that much time? It might not be noticeable like this because of the magic of editing, but trust me. But no matter, she soldiered on, adding panels and fixing dialogue that she was now realizing sounded way cheesier than intended. Original words like, "and I knew I was done for," would eventually go on to be changed to, "and I got swept off my feet." Still cheesy, but dang, it sounds better. Luckily, ye olden days Cecilia wasn't totally incompetent, so many of the old panels could be redrawn as is, but with smarter choices and prettier art. The main mistakes of ye old Cecilia being that the panels were just too damn close to each other and would hinder the pacing, and spoiling the next panel that was about to come. Bad, ye old Cecilia, bad. Get good. What ye old Cecilia didn't realize at the time was that, well, webcomics use the scroll format, and the scrolling of the page can basically be equated to the page turn in regular comics that can be used to create suspense, or in the case of this meet-cute prologue, to soften the scene, to make it more romantic and more impactful. You'll notice how present-day Cecilia decided to go with color transitions for big reveal drawings to make the chapter breathe more, and not to overwhelm her readers with clunky panels that chop off the top and bottom of the scene for no good reason besides not knowing better at the time. So, by adding these lengths to the chapter and adding in a couple of extra panels for spice, present-day Cecilia created a nicer introduction to the characters than previously. It is still one heck of a coincidence that the characters met, and we're not gonna go into the implications of that, or that Axel mostly sees her from the back and determines he likes her from 3/4 view in the back. But you tell me how she could have done the scene differently without changing some major elements to the entire chapter. She does realize in hindsight that it is kind of funny, but she likes that scene, so she'll keep it in. Since present-day Cecilia decided to one-up her olden-days self, she challenged her drawing abilities by completely changing the angle of the street Axel is walking down on. Instead of trusty but boring old one-point perspective that she oh so loves, she went with a two-point perspective background, questioning her sanity a couple of times during the process. She's not particularly a background artist, so trying to invent the street in a funkier perspective was a big ask of herself. No matter how many references she looked at, she still tried to cut corners, eventually realizing that it was all in vain and that she should just draw it properly the first time. Help is always good, and she's always one to say go ahead and use whatever tool you have available to make your life easier. But in this instance, she couldn't see any other solution besides just drawing the perspective and hoping for the best. Luckily, it all turned out well in the end. An update of the subsequent backgrounds was also necessary, not to mention an update of the lady selling fruits, because her design was real sad in the original version. She might be a background character, but she looks so much better with this redesign, although not something most readers will notice, but her new design is just way cooler than the old one. Even though she has still no face to speak of, but well, she's pretty old like this. Present-day Cecilia went all out in detail, a problem she has with most of her drawings and chapters. Generally speaking, since a webcomic often has tight deadlines, like in her case, the smart thing one would do is simplify the art as much as possible while still keeping it good, in order to not get burnt out artistically. But she decided to go, nah, no way, no how, and stubbornly still makes chapters with exponentially more details each time. Now real talk for a second. I'm making jokes here, but while detail sounds good in theory and artists can pull it off, in my case because of stubbornness and a bit of pride also, if you ever decide to make a webcomic, please don't overwork yourself trying to make everything perfect every time. If you impose yourself a tight schedule, it will hinder you in the long run. I know some people might complain about it, but as long as you are proud of your work, it is still worthwhile in my opinion. Writing a story under pressure is no joke, and once it feels like an obligation, your writing and consequently your art will most likely suffer also, not to mention your general state of mind. I said it jokingly earlier, but I really do not enjoy drawing backgrounds that much. I will do them, and I have to get to like them also, but I do not consider that to be one of my key strengths. For many chapters, I use 3D models to help me, and I also use, you might laugh, but The Sims. Yup, The Sims. It's super helpful. You just create your house or rooms with roughly the kinds of furniture you want in them, and just go into the camera mode and take screenshots to help you with perspective. This is how the backgrounds of the recent chapters have been made. There are much more professional ways of doing this. I believe programs like SketchUp or other 3D softwares you can modelize backgrounds, but I do not know how to use them, and I don't really have the time to learn it. So this is kind of like the poor man's solution. I mean, The Sims can cost an arm and a leg, but this is for when you already do have the game. Okay, phew, that was actual advice. Now, let's go back to making fun of me. My perilous journey of lining had only just begun, yet it was still not as dangerous as that one time 2 weeks ago when my tablet's pen pressure sensitivity decided to give in the towel for the entire day, which not only panicked me, but severely hindered my progress. Luckily, I figured out what the problem was, and the solution was worthy of a facepalm, but at least it didn't hinder this particular speed paint. It did, however, slow down my progress on the chapter I was working on, but that's beside the point. It's as if the tablet is trying to tell me something. I don't know what it is, but it's trying to say something. Or I am just really bad at putting in the correct settings, even though I was working all day on it the day before, and it was working fine, but then it just decided that it's not gonna work properly for that day. I don't know, didn't touch the settings, didn't do anything that would alter the settings, but it's still, for some reason, sometimes I would put my pen on the screen and nothing would happen. No line, would try 6 times, the 7th time it would do a half line, and then nothing. So I was here, sitting like panicking. Why won't you work? why won't it work? Tried so many solutions, the last one somehow worked, and I'm just happy it did. I don't know why it wouldn't have worked before, but it's working now. So yeah! As you guys might be able to tell by the tone of which I started out this video and the fact that I started talking in the third person for like half of this video, this has been a journey. It's taking a toll on me working on this chapter, and it's really not that long. I'm happy the way it turned out, and I mean, there are parts of it that I think I did improve on a lot of things that I did, but at the same time it took out so much from me, this short little thing. Like, I honestly believe, like, the shots of Axel looking really awestruck, I love that shot. That's probably like the favorite drawing of this whole chapter that I did, and I just love the expression. This is one of my favorite expressions to draw, this sort of like doe-eyed, like just awestruck. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's like when you're just like, oh shit. I don't know how to explain this. That kind of moment when it's like the ball drops and your eyes are just wide open, like, oh, whoa. It's sounded a bit weird here, but you know, drawing expressions is like the most satisfying thing in my opinion, because like you get to draw the exterior demonstration of somebody's inner world, which is, I feel like that's something difficult to pull off, because it's so personal, it's so subjective. One person might not interpret the same situation the same way, like something, I don't know, for example, Axel. He's a very, very expressive character, sort of. He's a clumsy man who's extremely shy and socially awkward. So of course he would overreact a lot of situations, or would feel kind of stronger emotions, even if it's not necessarily that big of a deal. But for somebody who's anxious or very, very shy, it would be a big deal, even if it isn't. So it's very satisfying to draw a character that can so outwardly express their emotions. Actually, I think it's one of the things that is kind of consistent in my characters, that most of them are really expressive, and because that's what I like. There's only a couple of characters like Lloyd that comes to mind. He's like the least expression. He has the least expressions in the story, but it's also part of his personality because he's more poised and he's a very rational character, so he wouldn't overreact because he wouldn't think of it as a big deal. So I don't know, like when I created Lloyd initially, he was meant to be sort of the opposite of Axel. Like it was meant to stand out, sort of, that the main character is very expressive and jumps to conclusions, and he's shy and anxious, as opposed to his best friend, who could not give any less of a hoot about what's happening and is gonna straight up tell him he's being an idiot if he is being one. Since I'm already going off script as is, I might as well just precise that when I said in the beginning of the video in a joking manner that my computer crashed, it did actually crash, and it was not just like the little, oh, I restarted my computer and it was fine. No, it's a blue screen of death, my computer crashed. Which means that we had to reinstall Windows on it, and I failed to take off all my settings for Clip Studio Paint, so I had to reinstall all the materials I downloaded, all the color swatches, I had to redo them. Luckily, I was smart enough back when I started doing this comic, to make just a JPEG with all the base colors of all the characters. Otherwise, it would have been a nightmare to try and find all the colors again. Okay, it would have just been like a color pick and everything, but it wouldn't have been as accurate. So I did try really hard to make this But this was like a series of unfortunate events. But I guess at least the chapter turned out really nice. At least I find like I'm proud of the progress. Like if I compare a side by side of the old one, like the version 1 that's not published, version 2 that's published, and I guess version 3, this new one, there's a big difference. It's just so much more polished. Though, if I were to redo the story, if I ever would go through with the whole redoing of the story, which I'm not quite certain I will, I would tweak sort of the beginning of the story, because I'm kind of unhappy sort of with certain decisions I've made that sort of hinder some of the storytelling I'm trying to do right now. Like in the beginning, I would do these like short chapters, which is not a bad thing. It's just right now it's been a gradually making longer and longer chapters, which I guess makes sense because I gotten used to working on the chapters, so I'm better at time management. But I feel like some of the older chapters were like the first ones were just too short, or just not polished enough. Because I used to work on Photoshop, and Photoshop is not really meant to make comics of this scale. At least I didn't know how to use it for that. And it shows, sort of. Like, I know which chapter I started using Clip Studio Paint with, but I think even just the natural, like the people who are not like artists would probably realize at which point there's a switch between softwares, because my brush doesn't even look exactly the same, because I couldn't redo the exact same brush, because it was like a downloaded brush, but the extension of the brush wasn't compatible between the two softwares, so I had to just like remake it, but I couldn't make it exactly accurately. So yeah, here's a little insider info. Anyhow, we're approaching the end of this speed paint now. This has been a journey. I feel like I felt all the emotions of the rainbow recording this video, and I hope it wasn't too unhinged. Anyhow, you can check out the high-resolution version of this drawing on my Patreon. Thank you very much to all of my patrons, including Alberto Jimenez, Robert, Britt, Beth Linkert, Connor Browning, Friendly Neighborhood School Counselor, Thaddeus Linville, Kat, Snoopy Doge, Morgan Greenwood, Metal Z, DB Explorer, Tyler Vanilla, Sage Baker, Michael Hepburn, Matthew Schechter, Bulky Emperor 614, Timmer, Vito, Olivia Carlisle, Emmanuel Feliciano, Josie, Jennifer Barcy, Danielle Huerta, Rebellious Cotton Candy, Bob Ross, and Saint Miel. Like and subscribe for more art videos whenever I manage to make some, and visit my social medias up on the screen right now. We've also got a Discord server where we hang out and chat. All links are in the description below. Thank you very much again, and I'll see you next time!